Hello, I'm Cody,
And I'm Laz.
and we're not just across the pond, we're across the
The
other
Other
pond.
Pond, the show where we take eraser shavings and put them on your kid's hot fudge sundae. It's
Hey,
just
if
a
you're
beautiful
if you're
thing.
liking our content, make sure you hit that like button, give us some comments, and hit the subscribe button.
And then clang that bell. Take a hammer and just beat the living hell out of that bell. You know?
Sound it. Just ding 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 ding. Just a little bell. Little bell.
Yeah.
The
See.
sounding of the bell. I was thinking, we might talk about this on like a philosophy episode, but I've been reading a little bit of Buddhist text lately, and one of the
Mm,
things is the sounding of the bell. Whenever you hear a
mm.
bell sound, or you can make it anything, but you just take a deep breath,
Oh yeah.
become conscious of your breath whenever you hear the sound of a bell. So when you sound that bell, practice mindfulness.
Yeah, like who have you been reading Thich Nhat Hanh?
I have been, yeah.
He's the one that I've heard say that.
I
Um
read his book Happiness, and it's very good.
Oh, if you want, I also have the book. What is it? Another really good book by him. I forgot what it's called. I'll tell you. I'll show it to you some other time. But you can totally borrow it if you want. Anything by Thich Nhat Hanh is just amazing. Like I've read like three of his books. That one yellow book that I got, and then two that I bought in China. And I forgot the Chinese one was like it was like something like don't be mad or something like that,
Huh.
something real. I've been wanting to buy his set where he talks about like very he there's this set where he's like how to eat, how to walk, you
Yeah,
know.
I think that's the one that I have. Happiness. It's
Mm,
basically just mindfulness practices.
mm,
This is totally not what this episode's about, though. So
uh,
today's episode, we're going to be talking about music education versus being a self-taught musician, and
mm.
kind of some of the pros and cons of both of those situations that you find
Well, I
yourself in
will.
as a musician.
Well, see, like I was just want to focus on like different types of music education in general, because it's not just like self education versus like institutional education. I'm also thinking about like the different strains of music education, because
Oh yeah, for sure.
um
Like when it comes versus the traditional European um, music theory, and then other cultures' music theory that they don't teach in a lot of institutions anymore,
well,
or at
there's
all.
that, and there's also that would be just different music cultures. But even in Western culture, we also have different music cultures. Like I was thinking with my experience, it's like the difference between, for instance, classical education, jazz education, or like rock education, folk education. There's all these different types of ways of learning music, that digest music in different ways, you know? Um, so, like, that's kind of where I was coming from. But I mean, we can just talk about music education in
Yeah,
general.
that's
So it doesn't really matter. We can just take it from a whole bunch of different angles, you know? So, like, why don't we talk about our music
I was gonna say the
education
first thing which probably
backgrounds?
establishes the background for us.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty much completely self-taught when it comes to music. It's either been you've taught me some stuff, or I've had to go out of my way to learn
Hmm.
through like YouTube lessons or books
Hmm.
that I've perused,
Hmm.
or just people teaching me. When I worked at the guitar store in Hawaii, people taught me a
Hmm.
lot of just music stuff.
Hmm.
So I just picked up a guitar and wanted to play music.
Hmm. Yeah, like I would say that you're mostly like a rock. You kind of come from a rock background.
Yeah, I would definitely say that.
Uh, so like that, which is a completely different way. Well, I mean, you also played trumpet back in school,
I
right?
did, but I don't think I really learned any like musical, like any way to actually learn music in band.
Mm,
I just played what they put in front of me. So I learned how to read sheet
mm.
music, but I didn't know what key I was in or anything. I just knew that I
Yeah,
played trumpet.
you
So
didn't know music theory.
yeah, I didn't know the language of music. I just knew that I could play these notes on my trumpet,
Mm,
basically, or what the song sounded like. So it gave me a sense of rhythm and
mm,
time and all that really
mm,
important stuff. But it didn't
mm,
like I couldn't have gone with that sheet music and been like, "Does this work with your sheet music?"
mm. Yeah. See, like, and most people that play in band and whatnot, they grow up not being able to understand what they're really playing. You know, they just know, okay, this is what I should play on this instrument when I see this note on this piece of paper.
Yep.
You know, like people don't, and then they understand some other simple concepts like getting in tune. But even then, like people don't. I never understood, at least way back in the day, why we tried to tune chords. Like I didn't understand what the point of it was, because like until I really got into um like uh different temperaments, you know.
Uh huh.
Do you know what a temperament is?
Yeah, the way the chord sounds with like all the instruments together,
Well,
right? Something like that. It's something to do with
kind of.
tonality.
Well, see what it is actually the relationships, the fractional relationships or the ratios between all the notes, you know. So like for instance, back in the Pythagoras days, like the fifths were tuned pure, you know, like the fifths were like king, you know, and everything else. Well, actually, and then like one of the thirds would be like extremely pure, where like when you played it, there would be no beats in it. But nowadays we use like equal temperament, so like all the ratios between the notes are all equal.
Uh huh.
So any chord you play is going to have beats in it. So it's going to sound like whoa, 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 whoa a little bit, you know? But back in the day, like you played just a C major chord and that would be the most pure chord. You would just hear it. Well, actually, if you want to go back, they would even tune it to A, right? A 440. Now it's more like C 4 or 432, right?
Interesting.
Like, is it that?
I feel like
I think
most things,
so.
like the guitar is tuned to A440.
Mm-hmm.
That's the standard that I always see on like guitar tuners.
Oh no, I'm thinking of something else. Like, oh no. Okay, so nowadays we're tuned to A440. Before it was A32, 432. So
Okay.
back in like Mozart's day and stuff, they used to tune it to A432, and even nowadays in some of those like classical concerts where they want to like go back to the roots, they will tune at A432 instead of A440 to get a more of a historic sound.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, and they'll
as
even
as
put like,
traditional as possible.
yeah, they'll even put like gut strings and stuff on their violins. You know,
Really, that's
mm-hmm.
pretty hardcore.
Yeah, but like yeah, equal. So like temperaments are like a whole different playing field, because like you know, back then, like for instance, playing a C chord, like it wouldn't have any beats at all. You would just hear like pureness, like kind of like when you play like to like the fifth the harmonic on the fifth fret in this in the harmonic of the seventh fret of the next string on
So when
guitar.
you say beats in this way, what do you mean by the beat in a chord?
Well, okay, so you know when you play two notes on a guitar, like that are the same note but on different strings, like if they're not in tune, you'll hear this kind of like woo 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 woo
Yeah, you
woo
hear a
woo
little
woo
bit
kind of sound.
of differing because of the I guess the temperament.
Well, it's that one. For instance, let's say we're tuning to an A, a middle A, and one is at 440, but the other one is at 441 or something.
Okay.
You'll hear like some whoa whoa whoa, and if it's even farther away, like 443, it'll be whoa 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 whoa, you know.
Okay.
Like you'll hear, because you're hearing the difference
Yeah, in
between.
the peaks.
Yeah, well, you're kind of hearing the interference between them, because like you're hearing like all of the you're hearing the all of the peaks, like from the amplitude, because like that's what a wave is, right? It like comes up to its highest amplitude and it comes down, like that. So you're hearing like all, like you said, all the peaks there. Like instead of just hearing wum wum
Yep.
wum, you're hearing like this one's going like boo doo doo and this one's going like this. So you're hearing both of them, like all the peaks in between
Yeah, I get
where
what
they're
you're
kind of
saying.
fighting each other. But so that's and like, so one note on like a piano or anything like will have a whole bunch of different harmonics in it, which create the sound, like, because like the different timbres of an instrument is just like the different um like amplitudes of, or the different, the the variation in volume between all the different harmonics in one note,
Okay.
you know, which
Yeah,
the
I get what
most
you're saying.
basic would be a sine wave. But then, like, if you have something like a trumpet, it's going to be even more. I mean, that's a simple way to put it, but there's other things like, um, I don't know, the transients and all that stuff. It all kind of comes together to make timbre. But so like if you have like one note, and you can do this on a piano, play a C, and then like you'll actually hear the C above it, and then you'll hear the G above that, and then the C above that, and then you'll also hear the E and the G. You'll hear all those notes in there. And you can even lightly press down all those notes on top of that note and not act like have the hammer hit the string, and play that low note, and you will actually hear it ring out on
Because it's
all those
hitting all of the
notes.
same frequencies.
Yeah. So like it's like what is it's kind of like what a sitar does with the sympathetic strings.
Okay.
Like that's actually why you hear the thing on the sitar, because like when you play a note on there's usually two strings on a sitar that are for playing like melody, but then there's like a whole bunch of other like 20 other like little strings that are just open strings, that when you play the melody strings, then like whatever note you hit might just so happen to like
Resonate with
ring.
those other strings that aren't being played.
Yeah, like how when you're playing guitar, sometimes one note will like buzz your coffee mug on the table or something.
Yeah. It's called resonant frequency, is what it is.
Yep. And
The
see,
way it
that's what
was,
they're using.
yeah, the way it was described to me in physics is it kind of happens when you're driving too. When you're on the
Mm,
road, sometimes there's a certain speed that some cars get to that something will just start to shake in the car. So you're going
mm,
like exactly 73 miles per hour and your wheel starts shaking. But if you get to
mm,
75, it stops. That's that
mm.
same idea, but on, in mechanics.
Yeah. And I mean, like vibrations make sound,
Yep.
like, and like, so that's just like, I guess that's the opposite way of looking at it. But like, so like, um, you can use that to your advantage, like you can, like the sympathetic strings on a sitar, or there's other instruments that have sympathetic strings as well. I can't think of anyone at the moment, but mostly like the main example would be sitar.
Uh-huh.
So like, yeah, it's and so like the frequencies, coming back to temperament, that's why like the original kind of like temperament, the Pythagoras temperament, was like based on fifths, and you would get it at an exact like 3-2 ratio, you know because it's like the second simplest ratio after 2-1,
Yeah.
which would be an octave,
Oh, yeah,
so
you're
three
totally
to
right.
two would be a fifth, and then after that 4-3 would be a fourth, and then 5-4, 5-4 would be a major third, you know so that's actually why, that's one of the reasons that a um a major chord is like the basis of everything. But the other reason is the harmonic series, because in the harmonic series, for instance, if we start on a C fundamental tone, we go up to the C above that, we go to the G above that, then the C, and then the E, and then the G again. And look what we got again.
The
Another
same.
major chord.
Yep, another major
It's
chord.
just a regular, just C major triad. So, like, sometimes people don't realize that that's the reason why we base everything off of, major chords, So, like, and even before that, it was more based off of, like, fifths. If you listen to old, like canonical music and whatnot, it's all, like, a lot of it is monophonic, and then when they do bring in, like polyphonic stuff, like two parts or more, like they would actually have usually base it on an octave or a fifth,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a quick little.
That's a nice little musical
tangent.
lesson. Now, Les, what would you say your background is in providing musical lessons to people?
Providing musical.
What's your music education level?
Well, I mean, so pretty much like when I really started learning how to, play and just read music and everything would be back in 5th grade when I first went into the school band, and I picked trombone as my instrument. But at the exact same time, I don't know when, I think it was very close after I started playing trombone, because I still remember like getting that trombone for the first time in the classroom and playing fart tones on it. And then like very
Fart
soon.
Tones?
Yeah, because when you're a kid and you play trombone, it's like you can't get like nice soothing sounds, like, I don't know. Let me see if you get like,
yeah, because
right?
Your embouchure is weak.
Yeah. Well, you don't know what you should be doing,
Yeah.
You just kind of fart around. So like after that, I just kind of naturally progressed to, I want to make video game music. That's all I remember. I just want to make game music like what I heard on my favorite games. So I downloaded Finale Notepad, and then Finale Notepad was what I started composing on. Just like dragging notes on a virtual sheet, which only could give me like 8 tracks at a time because it was the free version.
Uh-huh.
And like I would just, make a whole bunch of random music on there, like and I would have the shitty MIDI kind of instruments on there too, like the old, like it's like pretty much like even worse than 16-bit stuff, kind of stuff, whatever you usually hear on like a Walmart keyboard,
Really old. You want to pick that up for your kids?
Yeah, but so like that was pretty much my thing all the way up to, and at that time I was also super interested in all other instruments. So pretty much like right off the bat, my best friends around me I think mostly played trumpet. So like I picked up the trumpet fairly quickly, like and to this day, like I'm weird in the way that B flat treble clef is one of my natural like music tendencies. Like I can read it like no problem.
It's like a second language at this point.
Yeah, because like the trombone is a C instrument, but a trumpet, it's a transposing, it's a B flat instrument, so everything's written a whole step up, right? So like I just kind of learned at an early age that. So like, and I would also play all these other instruments, like whatever I could get my hands on. The euphonium, it was brass first. Tuba I could never really, because it was expensive and you'd leave them only at school. French horn was also one that I bought a French horn once, but then, yeah. But yeah, I would just like play all these different instruments just because I was so interested in them. And I got a bass, let's see, in I think 6th grade, or yeah, I think 6th grade I got it. And I still remember like getting this little shitty bass kit like for $150 on eBay, like back in 6th grade.
Nice.
And it had the whole shebang. It was a cherry red, like, I don't know what brand
Probably like
of a
First
bass.
Act. Maybe no. Probably
Not
little,
even.
probably
It was better. It was a little better than First Act.
If it was $150. The First Act would have been like $80.
And then it had this little shitty amp that was only like 20 or 15 or 20 watts. And I brought that down to the basement that wasn't finished at the time. And I remember the first time the first tune that I learned to play was Wild Thing. It was like boom, 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 and I would be like Wild Thing. I still.
That's so crazy to think as a 6th grader playing that song though, because that's like the. Mm-hmm. Did you hear that like listening in your dad's car and stuff?
I already was pretty much exposed to a lot of, like we kind of. I think it was because of Pep Band. That's it.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm sure they played that in Pep Band.
Yep. So like I started learning that, and then it wasn't until like 7th or 8th grade that I really started getting into rock music. I actually remember the first rock album that I bought, and do you remember which one it was that I like? Do you,
was it an
like?
Aerosmith
I think I told you.
Album?
No, it's a very embarrassing one to get, because I remember like Sophie was the one that started getting me into rock, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
is that band still in your top 5 list that we did?
No,
last season?
No.
Okay, yeah, then I don't think you mentioned.
But think about what kind of music was, what was like the most popular band back in middle school.
Was it a Linkin Park album? Because that was my middle school life.
Close. Like, think about like the most popular album in that time. Like think kind of punk.
Kind of punk.
It was like pop punk.
Was it American Idiot?
Green Day. But it wasn't American Idiot. I bought what is it? I bought a Green Warning.
Warning. Okay.
Yeah, like I just knew that, okay, I need to go get a Green Day album, and I just bought whatever I found in the back of Walmart, like, so like, yeah, that was the first album that I bought and listened to that counts as rock. And of course I listened to American Idiot through like, I don't know, I think I went through like LimeWire or one of those like,
oh man,
like
that LimeWire, the green lime, classic. Take 7 hours to download a bunch of stuff. It wasn't always that. I remember I would download tracks that absolutely did not correspond with what the name on the track was. I was like, this isn't exactly. Wild Thing.
Like when you would like look up classical musicians, and it was very obvious no one knew which one was which.
Oh yeah, and
like you'd look up Mozart, and then you would hear. You would get like, I'm like, that's not Mozart, But yeah, like pretty much that's when I started really getting into rock, and that's actually also very soon after that was when 2 other guys in the band, they were like looking for a bassist, and they just like, they didn't really know me or anything, but they just called me one day because they got like my phone number from one of my friends, and they were like, hey, you want to be in a band with us? And I'm like, sure. And but at that time also around middle school, that's when rock like Guitar Hero came out, right?
Yep.
So I was starting to get exposed to that stuff as well on Guitar Hero. And so like that's when I started, and this is like a very important part of my musical education, which I actually did have jazz exposure in middle school too, because there was a jazz band.
I played jazz band for a little bit. In 8th grade, I was in the jazz band.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing trumpet for jazz band. But yeah, that I think it was either 8th or 9th grade that Guitar Hero came. It must have been 8th grade that Guitar Hero came out. And I would definitely contribute the fact that I play guitar to playing Guitar Hero. I was like, I
because
want to play guitar so bad.
yeah, like I do. I think it was early 2000 because I remember 2001 or something. That's when, like 2000, because we had a blue van and that had a VHS player, and you can also plug in auxiliary stuff to it. So I remember first of all watching Pokemon the movie 2000 on it. So that must have been probably 2001 because back in the day, like going from the movies to like VHS like took like a whole year, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was about a year.
So I remember watching specifically Pokemon the movie 2000 in that van, but also playing Guitar Hero and going through like a McDonald's in the van on this tiny little screen, you know?
A specific memory to have. It's very cool.
Yeah, I have like weird like specific memories like that, you know. But anyway, like yeah, so I at that time I already had like jazz and classical, but the thing is with jazz, I didn't really have the real jazz experience back then because like I was it was pretty much being taught like classical, like just play what's on the page kind of thing.
I would say the same thing about my jazz band.
Which you also kind of got the idea of what swinging was, but man, like
my band director, he was a pretty good director, but for some reason the sixth graders were having a really hard time figuring out what swing was. So he decided that instead of really drilling into them what swing was, he decided that we would just play everything straight. So we were playing Jingle Bell Rock, and instead of playing it with swing, he was like, "Well, just play it straight." I was like, "Just tell them what swing is supposed to sound like."
So it's not da 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 da.
It was da da da. Da, 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 da. I was like, this is just Jingle Bells. We're not playing Jingle Bell Rock. It made me so frustrated in 8th grade thinking just make them play swing.
Well, that's probably
what the thing is. Get it, but you have to just be like, you have to do this.
Well, the thing is, I don't think a lot of the band directors really practice jazz because, like, the thing is, like, a lot of them just got placed in that situation. You know?
For sure.
Like,
it's not like they wanted to. And I think in the jazz band, maybe he let us do swing. That might have just been the regular band practice. He was like, we're going to play everything straight. But I guess, jazz band was much smaller and people who actually wanted to play music.
Yeah.
It sticks with me.
Yeah, like, it kind of reminds me of my jazz experience when I was in Shanghai that one time. Like, I don't know where the jazz band was from, what school it was, but, like, first of all, it's really interesting in China, like, they don't have a lot of these performances, they won't have everyone silent. Everyone is making a ruckus in the auditorium. Like, people are just talking to each other and all this stuff, and they're playing on stage. Like, over here, it's a big no-no, but over there, that's just like the norm.
It's a huge faux pas to be like.
But back in the day too, like in Mozart's time too, that's kind of also what performances were. It wasn't like sit down and be quiet. It was, we're going to put this small little orchestra in the corner of the room and you guys will have a good time and they'll be playing music in the background.
Yeah.
So we don't realize that in the context of music history, actually a lot of times these small quartets and whatnot, or ensembles, chamber ensembles, were actually just like background music. You know, it wasn't like the main event kind of thing. But yeah, so like in China, all their performances are basically like that. And so then a lot of them was just like dancing. They had like all these things put together. It wasn't just music, you know? And so like one of them was a jazz band and it was like 3 songs and they didn't swing at all. Not at all. It's like you hear like a song like, you know, Autumn Leaves, you know, and it's not ba-da-da-ba, ba-do-do-da. It's ba-ba-ba-ba, 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 you know.
the dissonance I'm feeling, but you just singing it that way is
I
making
don't
my
know.
mind tremble.
Yeah, it was very strange because it reminds me kind of like the Chinese language, or at least Mandarin. It's choppy.
Oh,
And
that's an interesting way to think about that.
yeah. But anyway, um, yeah, like that was an interesting experience. But yeah, like jazz, it doesn't seem to be very um integrated yet in Chinese society. It is in Japanese society. There's some great Japanese jazz musicians, but
I think they
anyway,
really
like
like those. I almost call those jazz chords like the ethereal chord sounding stuff, the sevens and
mm,
11s and stuff. I think they really
mm.
love those chords
Oh
because
yeah,
they use them all over the place.
one of my favorite chords is like the major seventh sharp 11 chord.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like bum 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 bum. Let me see. Bum 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 bum. No, what was it? What would it be? Bum 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 bum. No, not bum 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 bum. There you go. Bum 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 bum. That kind of thing. Because like it reminds me so much of Breath of the Wild,
Oh
because I think
yeah.
they use that chord a lot in Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I love the sharp 11 chord. It's one of my favorites. But anyway, yeah, Japanese composers use that a lot now. But so going back to middle school. So once I got into the freshman of high school, we started being in the rock band. And at that time, I was pretty much like play what's on the page kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
But and I was still kind of, but I started looking at tabs, and we started playing things like Crazy Train and like Tool, like 46 and 2, The Pot. What else? Also some Primus stuff like was it not
Jerry was a race
Jerry
car
was a race
driver.
car driver, also like what is it, John the Fisherman,
John,
and
yeah.
all that. So we would get these tabs from like these guitar magazines and whatnot, and I would read that. But then I stopped. I started. I don't know when it was. I think it was when I realized that, was it War Pigs was just so complicated that you could just fiddle around for the most part on like some of these parts, and I just stopped. I stopped caring about exactly what's written on the tabs and just kind of started listening to things and playing. And that was the first time that I really started straying away from like the classical tradition,
Uh-huh.
And so then I started playing in the jazz band like in junior high school, as the bassist. And so that's when I started like getting into just playing playing changes, with like a bass part and whatnot.
Yeah, the
But
walking
still
bass lines
sometimes,
and
yeah, but at the same time, not really understanding how to create a walking bass line. But at that time, it was starting to get into that kind of thing. I still didn't really understand how to solo, and I still really don't understand how to improv over changes, which, if anybody doesn't know what changes are, because you might be a classical composer or a player, it's just like a chord progression, there's a lot of terms in jazz that are much different.
yeah,
Like
because I
the
guess
terms,
classical music is very tonal in the sense it stays in the same key throughout the whole piece.
no, but you can't say that.
You don't
like
think
it,
so?
if you stay in,
I guess they do
there's the
modulate.
things as modulations. Yeah. Like like and you got, there's so many different type, there's tonal and there's atonal music
Yeah.
too. Like you can have like that, and then of course there's going to be modulations and whatnot, and even like borrowed chords and whatnot. You can have like, what is it, if you're in the key of C, you can still have an E flat, a major in there, and it's just going to have a kind of like, I almost like to say it's like a godly sound, because like when you play chord, like a whole bunch of chords outside of the of like major or something, and kind of just a whole bunch of them, especially if they're all the same chord, like all major or all minor, it kind of has this like sound of like God is here, and I don't know. It's such an interesting kind of sound. But anyway, yeah, like that was when I was in the jazz band, was when people started kind of soloing, but like we didn't learn really how to construct a solo. It was just, here's some chords, play these chords, and with scales, and there wasn't much thought in it. It wasn't until like college that people started really actually studying the way of like building an improv sound, your own language, which is very, very different than classical. Because like I really noticed the rift between classical and jazz musicians in college. Because like, first of all, I realized that jazz musicians are much more musical. Classical musicians, at least how they're trained in school, which it seems like their ears get much, much better outside of school. Like, and this is one thing that I really, really hate about the classical music tradition, is they're pretty much, it all boils down to play what's on the page and play in this tone. It's like a specific tone. It's a very conservative kind of mindset. Just, it's like, there's like one goal, one target. It's like, be this sound and play this music and don't stray away. You can't stray away. You can't play this extra note or whatnot. In jazz, it's just like, dude, you got your own sound. Like, whatever. Like, you flumble a lot. That's just color, And then like,
do you think that the classical tradition stems from the fact that most of the time when you're playing a classical piece, you're not playing your own music, you're playing something that's written by somebody else for you to play for them, basically? Because when you think about like composition in the 1800s, if you wrote a violin piece and you didn't play a violin, you'd give it to a violinist and they'd play it, and you'd want it to sound the way that you wrote it.
Well,
so the fact that they play on the page could stem from the fact that this is coming from an outside source, so I need to play it the way they want to hear it.
Well, the interesting thing is, though, that back in the day, actually, you didn't have like strict, like, especially with the bass parts, you didn't have. Sometimes they wouldn't even write bass parts; they would just write chords, and then you would just make up it on the spot.
Huh?
Like, yeah, that it's called I think pedal bass, or something like that. Like
I feel like I've heard the term double bass.
Pedal, I think it's called pedal bass.
Okay.
But yeah, they would write the melody on top. And this is like 1600s, 1700s, and even like in the, what is it? The Renaissance. They would just write out like the chords. And especially in the Renaissance, like if you had like what is it? Not a trebuchet. What is that? The big old, it's like a giant lute, and it has a whole bunch of these open strings on it.
I don't know.
What is it called? But like, yeah, they would have a lot of lutes and stuff. The lutes would just kind of like fiddle around on these chords and whatnot, and then like the other instruments, or even like on the lute itself, because they could play like, just like on a classical guitar, like you can play multiple parts, right? So they would write a melody, but then they would have like the chords written out in a certain way, and you would just kind of make up, because they didn't really care about the parts below the melody. They just were like, yeah, here's the melody, and then just do all this other crazy stuff. It doesn't matter. Just support
Otherwise,
it.
the melody's fine.
Yeah. So like, it's just like, I don't know at what point classical tradition changed so much to the point where it's like, just write what's on the page. And I think before the 20th century, actually, a lot of the tempos and like the the articulation was just kind of up to the players or up to the conductor of the ensemble. Because like if you look at like old Beethoven or Mozart pieces, they don't really write staccatos or tenutos or any or accent marks or stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's just kind of like it a lot of times it was just assumed where like staccatos should be or accents should be. Like it wasn't until the 20th century when they were like, we're going to make all these new markings to make you know exactly what we want. Exactly, you know? So that you once you get to the 20th century, you get really hardcore into like, if you don't play what I wrote, then you're an idiot kind of
Yeah, the
mindset.
atonal composers of the 20th century, that like right after the jazz renaissance of like the 30s and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they wrote some really strange stuff to be
Mm-hmm.
unique because of how much had already been written, basically. Because one of the things that stuck to me about that Alex Ross book, The Rest is Noise,
Mm-hmm.
is that whenever music hits like a critical mass, it like
Mm-hmm.
a composer will come along who tries to reinvent it, basically, which is what that
Yeah.
atonality came from, which is probably where that classical of you need to play what I wrote comes from, because like can't think of his fucking name right now. Not John Cage, because John Cage was pretty out there in terms
Mm-hmm.
of you can play whatever you want. I just want it to.
Well, give me some details. I might be able to help you.
He wrote The Rite of Spring, is who I'm
Oh,
thinking.
Stravinsky.
Not
Yeah,
Stravinsky.
Igor Stravinsky.
Yeah. No, is it
Yeah, Stravinsky.
Strauss? Strauss and Stravinsky are
Richard
the two
Strauss?
that I mix back and forth.
Richard Strauss Jr. was Richard Strauss, and there was Richard Strauss Jr., but Richard Strauss made the famous tone poem for Also sprach Zarathustra.
Okay, yeah, he's before that. Yeah, it must be Stravinsky
Mm.
that I'm thinking of, who
Mm.
was very much in that he didn't like the old style of the late 1890s and stuff and reinvented
Mm.
with the Rite of Spring and
Mm.
the 12 tone system that he invented.
Mm. No. He didn't invent the 12 tone. The guy
Who did
that
12 tone
invented
then?
12 tone was Schoenberg.
Schoenberg. That's who I'm thinking
Mm.
of.
Yeah, Arnold Schoenberg. Mm.
A lot of S names when it comes to
Yeah.
composers in the 20th century.
Mm. Stravinsky is one of my favorite. I love.
I really like Stravinsky. I listened to a bunch of it while I was reading through, and I really did enjoy a lot of his stuff. But yeah, I think he was a very play what's on the page type of composer.
Yeah, like he started getting into some really crazy stuff before a lot of people really got into it.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
like
the Rite of Spring was laughed at when it was played for the first time. The people in the room stood up and were like, "This is ridiculous."
That is actually false. Like what actually happened was like the reason people were booing at it was because the dancers got off, and they couldn't get used to the rhythms because there's a lot of like these weird.
Yeah, it was
like,
a really strange piece. Yeah, that doesn't mean the piece wasn't booed though.
Well,
the first performance was booed because it wasn't. It was new.
Well,
it was weird.
It wasn't like I've heard, like people like to throw that anecdote around, being like, oh, he was so out there that everyone hated it, but it was actually, from what I've heard, is that the dancers got off, and so it was so off that it was super noticeable, and so people just started booing. And Stravinsky himself was also trying to get people back in time, but he couldn't, and so it just turned into a train wreck. So like because like if you also look at the the Rite of Spring was made in 1903, right?
Yeah, very early turn of the century.
Let me see, was there anything else that was way out there? I mean, you got Stravinsky. Who else you got? You got Richard Strauss. Like it's like the late romantic, early like 20th century kind of composers, because we hadn't really gotten way out there yet. We're still kind of like impressionism and stuff, because you also have like, what is it, Eric Satie, like the impressionists like Ravel, Debussy. Like you already got some strange stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're starting to get into parallel kind of stuff, like what is it, symmetrical scales, like whole tone things written in whole tone scales and whatnot. So I judging by the history there, and especially like Stravinsky, he would have been back then the intellectual circle was all around France, and like Stravinsky, everyone, like, because back then, like early 20th century, the world language was French. So Stravinsky would probably, I think, Rite of Spring was debuted in Paris.
I believe that's correct.
So like, yeah, like, and if it was around Paris around that time, Debussy was already creating some crazy stuff, and Ravel was making some crazy stuff. Like, just listen to, like, what is it? Something Esprit en Nuit. It's like one of the hardest piano pieces to play. Ravel is a crazy man. Like, he has made some crazy piano music. But like, I would doubt that people would boo Rite of Spring because of its harmonies, you know? But, you know, like, and this is kind of going off of going off of the of the topic, really. Like,
yeah, we're straying a little bit. But that's part of musical education, is music history as well, which I think is not taught very much when it comes to learning how to play an instrument. I feel like it's kind of glossed over the amount of history you need to learn.
Well,
not need to learn, but
we kind of had like music appreciation kind of back in, because we did learn about it in
I took a music history class, music appreciation class, but it didn't stick for me.
Well, we had what is it? There was we went to music classes in elementary school, and we would sing songs, and we would learn about like composers and whatnot, and we would watch videos and whatnot. We would watch Fantasia and whatnot, and listen and learn about the composers. I forget, but when I was a kid, most of my knowledge of composers was from the Quantum Leap pad. Do you still remember that?
I do remember the Quantum Leap pad. I don't think I ever actually had one myself, but I had a couple of friends that definitely had some of those things, and I'd see them on advertisements and stuff. I think most of my classical music knowledge came from Looney Tunes, just listening to Looney Tunes, because they used it a lot. Well, yeah,
in Looney Tunes they like the first time I heard Carmen
all the time.
You know,
and it's fantastic.
Like there was the Bugs Bunny episode where they played Carmen. You know, the boom, 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 boom.
They have the Barber of Seville is in an episode.
Yeah.
I actually saw a Twitter thread a month or two ago that did a whole deep dive on it, and it was incredibly enlightening.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yep.
That's interesting. Because like now that I think of it, actually, I never actually brought that to the front of my mind. I've always kind of thought like, yeah, these are Tom and Jerry too, right?
Tom and Jerry did it as well. Yeah, a lot of those amorphous animals that didn't speak episodes and stuff like that, they would use classical music to portray feeling and just give like a structure to the episode.
I don't think it's amorphous, because amorphous means like shapeless.
You're right.
What is it? Anthropomorphic.
Anthropomorphic is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, amorphous would be like a blob. But I mean, like you're thinking about the Amoeba Boys, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you not watch the Amoeba Boys? Was that just my childhood? They would just dance along to the Rite of Spring. Get off time.
Oh man, I haven't thought about the Amoeba Boys in like I don't know how many years. They were like the most useless like Powerpuff Girls villains. But like, what is it? Yeah, we like, man, if I could get my hands on that Quantum Leap Pad book with like the composers, and it would have like all the instrument families and whatnot, and like you could press like
You'd press it and it would play the sound.
Like you would hear like Gustav Holst and like Mozart and Bach and like all these other guys. Man, it was, oh man, I I forget how much influence that book had on me, because I think that was what really opened up my imagination for music and wanting to be a composer. And I remember like back in middle school telling myself over and over again, I want to be just like Bach, I want to be like Mozart, I want to be one of the greats, you know. I used to always tell that myself in my mind, but then like in high school and what is it, college, I started realizing there's way too many greats. there's so many greats, you know. It's crazy. I mean, like so like going back to that thing about like playing just on the page, I think that's more recent than people think it is. It's, I would probably say it like probably as late as Debussy's time, which is like the early 1900s. Like people were still kind of playing like whatever they felt with articulations, or you know, the thing is it's not even like they just played whatever they felt or whatever tempo it was felt. Like there was actually a tradition of like this, when you see this kind of run, you should play it like this kind of thing, you know. Like they wouldn't need to put the articulations because it was just assumed through the tradition, you know. And that's like a lot of things, you know, in general, like even language. But yeah, like the thing is, that's way more recent than people think. And I think it's interesting that jazz came out of a place, it was a rebellion against like what was going on, you know, at the time. And like, cuz like you would, you know, like you would you would get into this in the early jazz music, like history is like, cuz like you go all the way back, it pretty much it starts at ragtime, you know, with like Scott Joplin. That's the only ragtime name I know. Like I don't know anybody else that plays ragtime. I only know Scott Joplin, and we learned a lot about him back in the day, which I forgot all the things I learned about him back in the day.
Except that he played ragtime.
Yeah, but that was like where you really started getting like the swing sound and whatnot, and then you start getting into like New Orleans jazz, where that's where it's kind of, you know, a whole bunch of just like the main thing I think of when I think of New Orleans jazz is they always have a section where they have like 3 instruments soloing at the same time, kind of braiding themselves together.
Yeah, it's jazz is really polyrhythmic. Whereas a lot of like that old classical style is very monophonic. Polyphonic, monophonic is what I'm thinking of.
Well, monophonic means one line. It means like one line of music.
Yeah,
so
like
if
the
you
melody.
it means like just like one line by itself. So think of like, you know, like the intro to Halo, that there's just one voice, right? That would be monophonic. Polyphonic would be like multiple voices at the same time. So like yeah, like what is it? Jazz is weird. Like
that's a nice way to say that.
Well, I think that's what the great Neil Peart said at a Rush concert once. No, it wasn't Neil Peart. It was Alex Lifeson.
Jazz is weird.
That. Yeah, he said that jazz is weird. I remember that. But like yeah, like jazz was just like, I don't know, like back in the day it was a lot of dance tunes, really. It was more for like,
yeah, it was like clubbing. but it was
Yeah.
clubbing throughout the 20s. You go and hang out at a jazz bar
Hmm.
that's playing, and even that still happens sometimes on some boulevards,
Hmm.
um, down in New Orleans, I should say. I
Well,
know my dad told a story of him walking down
mhm,
Bourbon Avenue, and you would just hear jazz coming out of clubs. Still,
mhm.
you just dance to it.
Yeah, like the thing is like early jazz was pretty much dance tunes, you know? You know, you think of like some of the great early jazzers like what is it? What's his name? Jelly Rolls or something like that. And then like oh man, I always forget his Louis Armstrong, you know. Um Fitzgerald, what's her name? Ella
Uh,
Fitzgerald. And then a little further up from that, because like that was like the 1920s or so. Like you go a little further to the 1930s and 40s, you start getting swing. You know, you start getting things like swing, swing, swing. You know, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum,
yeah,
bum, bum, ba-da-dum-da-dum-da. You get like the jazz orchestras going on, right? And then you get people like what is it? Oh, what's his name? The guy that plays clarinet, and I think he came up with In the Mood. I
I don't know any jazz clarinet players. I don't know why I'm even trying to think.
forgot, but like, see, like it kind of was a dance culture for so long. I mean, even further back, you got like in the 1910s, you got George Gershwin, right?
Yeah,
Um, but then like and Rhapsody in Blue also changed like classical music too altogether, because it was like if you listen to Rhapsody in Blue, it's not like structured like a traditional um like classical tune like a symphony or anything. Like it's a tune with visible seams. That's like a lot of people say. If you listen to it, like it doesn't make sense how things come in and out, kind of, you know.
interesting.
But like it kind of let people know it's like you can have a famous piece that's like really well regarded and not have to be in that form, you know. That was also kind of something that I think Gershwin brought to the table. But like jazz really didn't become like a real intellectual activity until like bebop started getting in.
Yeah, I'd say the
Like
album
bebop.
So What. Um,
Oh, that's modal jazz, like with Miles Davis.
Miles Davis, I think, was where
Mm,
that tipping point really was, because
I,
that's like
I,
the first big jazz record.
mm. So, well, you know what? Miles Davis. First of all, he's from around this area. You know that?
Really, I did not know that.
Yeah, he's from Alton.
No, that's crazy. Should be
Yeah.
more of a bigger statue there.
Oh yeah. Why don't they? Well, I
That
mean, the
tall
other
guy
thing
statue.
was like apparently like Miles Davis was also a dick. Like he got really angry and he like beat up a lot of women and whatnot. Um, but like he what is it? Yeah, he recorded all of his albums like one take.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like like so what? I think it was literally recorded in like an hour or two.
What an insane time to be a
I mean,
musician.
like it kind of goes with the title, right?
Yeah,
So
so
what?
what?
It's like, yeah, it's like, dude, you recorded an album on one take. You want to do another one? It's like, nah. It's like, don't like like,
I ain't
but
got time for that. Put the
it's
album
like,
together.
so what? You know, like, yeah, like, so it kind of started around then where you start getting these like really like crazy like intellectual stuff going on, because like back in like what is it? All the other like dance tunes, it was just kind of like make everything melodic, and then all of a sudden you come to bebop and it's just like fast go fast, and it's like all this like they people used to, it's kind of like how like when we were kids people saw like the rock as the devil's music. It's like also like kind of the thing with jazz, especially bebop. You
Yeah,
start getting into people thinking it sounds like noise, which is interesting because like a lot of the music we enjoy over here in the beginning, Fanfang heard as just noise.
You have to train your ear to listen to new stuff. It's a real phenomenon, I think, for sure. People will just be like, they'll just dismiss it. They'll be like, oh, I don't like that type of music. I always feel like you have to give music at least a couple of listens for your ears to pick up on what part of this is music. Because it's very easy for your brain to just tune out. There are definitely like studies that I've seen that the less you listen to like new music and stuff and kind of just repeat the stuff you like, you'll dismiss other types of music even when you hear them, because you'll just be like, oh, that's not what I like to listen to.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of the strategies with radio too. Like, I've heard
they love their formulas.
Well, like I heard a story of the song. What is that song? That Hey Yeah. Hey yeah,
Hey Ya by Outkast.
Hey yeah, by
yeah,
Outkast.
That was the lyrics.
I love that song. The first time, like, they tried to put that song on the radio, it was a flop. Like, it didn't sound like anything people have ever heard before. So, like, nobody listened to it, and everyone was thinking it's like, oh, this is going to be a hit and whatnot. But it just kind of flopped. But they figured out what they did later on was what they would do is, because they found out the reason people listen to radio isn't because they like to hear new songs or whatnot. It's because they like the background noise to have something familiar. Yeah. And that the sound of that song was not familiar. So what they did a little tricky trick. They sandwiched that song between other songs that were already known to be
good or listened to.
I like the phrase you just used, known to be good, because it's not that they really think in their hearts by themselves they decided that it's good. It's been known to be good, in the crowd.
Because I was just going to say what we were already saying was just that Outkast they were like, this is going to be a good song, but it was flopping.
Yeah, but see, they were an outcast, right? Right from the beginning. They decided
the game was rigged from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. They rigged it themselves, And like, so like, like after they start sandwich it between like these songs that are known to be good, like then it started becoming a hit, So it's like there's a psychological thing with like radio and stuff. Like I never realized it because as far back as high school, like I would listen to the radio specifically to hear new songs, and I've always been a person that doesn't see the word weird as a stigma. I've always thought weird was a good thing, so so with jazz, with bebop, that was when you started having people think it was like noise, and not liking jazz as like dance music or like pop music kind of stuff. Like it started getting into this intellectual zone. You start getting people like Charles Mingus, and then even later than that. Well, I mean, you also get like some of the great saxophone players, like who's the guy that does Giant Steps? I forgot. Oh my god.
Oh, I should know this.
Not Charlie Bird, but that's another great saxophone player. Ah, man, why can't I think? Oh my god, every saxophone player is probably yelling at me and like right now.
Yeah, we're getting some furious comments about who played Giant Steps.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh, Coltrane.
Sorry.
Right?
Coltrane, John Coltrane, duh. Oh my god.
Nailed it.
Thank you. But see, like, yeah, like you start getting that stuff where like it's just like it's getting more and more experimental, all the way down to you get into like free jazz, which was that other guy. What was that? Or if you want to speak in jazz terms, that other cat.
That smooth, cool talking cat playing on his piano.
I keep wanting to say George Orwell. Ornette Coleman. Ornette Coleman. That's it. Ornette Coleman. Have you ever listened to free jazz?
I don't think I have. I will say my jazz repertoire has probably not breached into the free jazz realm yet.
that's where things start really people that's where, especially once you get to free jazz, people start being like what is this, is this even music, kind of thing. And I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with what was going on in the 20th century. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize um that jazz and classical were influence each other, even though um was it, so a lot of people just kind of saw it as like opposites back then,
Yeah, it
and
would
even
definitely.
to
I
this
mean,
day.
if that free jazz was coming around the time that atonality was really hitting its stride,
Mhm.
it definitely would have effects on each other. You would have the composer listening to the local jazz scene, hear the sounds
Mhm.
that are coming out of that, turn it over into the atonal part, and it's just kind of a never-ending cycle. I think that's just music in general. Music should always be feeding off of itself, almost.
And you know what's a very strange example of this that happened back in the day is West Side Story. Like, the reason that we have West Side Story is like what oh my god, what is the guy's name? It's a super super famous conductor, music educator. What's his name? Oh my god! But he listened. I think it was to Charles Mingus, and he was like, "Play that again." Like, he was really really into it, you know. And man, this man, what is his name? Oh my god, West Side Story. Can you look that
The
up for
guy
me
who
really
wrote
quick?
it,
Yeah, who is it? Because he's like one of the most famous and
oh, it's
just
on the
like
tip of
one.
my tongue.
He's just so
Leonard Bernstein, right?
Leonard Bernstein. Yes. Have you ever? He's just like one of the most intellectual people of all time. Man, some of these conductors, even like the conductor of the St. Louis Symphony, oh my god, he is so amazing to listen to. Such an amazing human being, you know. But yeah, like Leonard Bernstein, I think he was listening to Charles Mingus and he was like really liking it, and like I think it inspired him to write some of the music in West Side Story,
Yeah,
because West
I mean
Side
it's very
Story you
jazzy.
listen to, yeah, and that's like a part where it started kind of seeping into the classical tradition too. You know, like both were um like influencing each other. But even to this day, a lot of people will kind of like see jazz and classical as opposites. And see, this comes all the way to now. Now we're living in, and this is another thing that's interesting with music history in general, is you usually have these periods of, it goes from classical to romantic, classical and romantic, kind of like these, each period will do that
Uh huh.
switch. And so what I mean by that is you got one period where it's going back to the greats. It's trying to it's like retrospective. And then you have another period where it's romantic, meaning it's kind of introspective and it's also forward thinking. So what they do is it's kind of like it goes from logical and thinking to feeling and sensual. So like if you look at like the classical period, it's, and even in architecture you start to see people going back to the ancient Greeks, and like you start to see columns again. And actually that period also created a lot of like the, like, was it the Capitol buildings and stuff that
Uh
you
huh.
see today, right?
Yeah, that you. I think the quote that sticks out to me, I don't remember the exact thing, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but is
Mm,
when the composers discovered that they had run out of ideas, they reverted back to they started from scratch. Is the
mm,
gist of it. It's just when you get to the point where you're looking at the greats and you're like, okay, we've done everything we can think of. They just would start again,
mm.
and you
Well,
just
again,
push the
I
envelope.
think people just get bored, or like I think what happens is people like go back to the greats and they're really like they have like this fetish for structure.
Uh huh.
They just want to keep getting it like right, and like trying to get the perfect structure and all this stuff while modeling it after the greats and whatnot. But then you get to a certain point where you get tired of being constrained so much, and so you just let all the you just
Let those
take off.
creative juices fly.
Yeah, and so then that's when you get like the Romantic period, or even the Impressionist period is even taken to its like limit at that time, where it's like they just wrote whatever they felt sounded good, you know, but they still had that background. Like it was already the classical tradition, the classical period stuff had already become like a uh like culture. It's already intuition, you know. And a lot of people, what they don't realize is also the Baroque period was kind of like one of those periods. The Baroque period wasn't as structured as people think it is,
Yeah, it was
you
pretty
know.
crazy. It was revolutionary almost. That's why it's so famous.
Mm. Yeah, well, like a lot of people think of Baroque now as like the greats and like so structured. It was actually classical period that really started to make things super super structured. Um, and I mean the Baroque period was pretty like, even because like going back to the Equal Temperament, when Equal Temperament came out, that's when well, it was like the first time they equal tempered like a clavier, you know.
Yeah.
And you have the Well Tempered Clavier where Bach made what is it, oh, what do you call it, tienzo, oh, what is it called, preludes in like all 24 keys,
Yes.
preludes,
Yep.
and
The
there is a
well-tempered clavier.
prelude and a fugue. Yeah, that's it. I think it was a fugue or something, or an invention, one of those.
I think a fugue is right because Bach had a
I think it's
lot of
invention.
fugues.
I think it was invention because Bach also had invention, which an invention is kind of like a fugue, but it's like fugue light kind
But
of.
anyway, Bach was insane. That's your
Mm,
musical takeaway.
uh-huh. Yeah. He was, but which
Actually,
he was not known at the time. He
no,
was not a known composer
because
at the
it's like
time.
his son or his grandson that really revealed a lot of the music that he'd had written.
I don't know, but his son CPE Bach was also kind of known too.
Yeah, there
Um,
were quite a few Bachs that got
yeah,
known throughout the Baroque period.
hmm, yeah, especially on the farm. Bach, 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 Bach. No. But what is it? Yeah, actually, back in the day, it was Buxtehude or something like that. It was like that even Bach like walked for like 20 miles just to hear Buxtehude, or I forgot his real name. It's something Buxt, like play on the organ, you know. But yeah, like they, so you got these periods of going from structure to just free, structure free, structure free. And the 20th century kind of made this go into hyperdrive because it was kind of like um you started getting into structure again. Like you think about Schoenberg, where it's, and like serialism, where it started becoming just um like we're going to play things mathematically, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
The 12
like go
tones.
through the
Yep.
12 tone stuff and whatnot, or even like cells or stuff, or even computer generated stuff, you know. Um,
It's gonna
and
rain.
that, and like you start getting like composers that like just like try to push all the limits in every direction at once. Like the 20th century was just like complete nonsense almost. It was just like this explosion of just everyone going in every direction, especially with the advent of magnetic tape. That was a
Yep. Being
huge
able to
huge
record
huge
in almost any environment, being able to
and to edit
play
it.
anywhere. The records, tape, CDs becoming
Mm,
widespread is probably the most insane thing that's ever happened to music history. You
mm.
don't have to go to a concert hall to listen to it. You can just put in a tape.
And see, that's another thing, like
It's insane.
with composers like what's the Hungarian guy's name? Man, I can't remember. Oh man, I haven't thought of these names for a while. But like the most famous um Hungarian composer, he he actually used wax cylinders to go out in these little Hungarian villages and record it, um folk
They're
music.
folk songs. I know who you're talking about. I cannot remember his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Oh my
He
god.
loved folk music so much.
Just look up like famous Hungarian composer, and it'll be the first one up. I guarantee you. Like, he's also one of the guys that I've really idolized. Bartók, yes,
Bela Bartók.
Bela Bartók.
Yep, that was who I was thinking of. Yep, yeah, because he died in 1945. He was pretty young. Well, he's like 70.
70?
64.
But, you know, like, it's... See, and Bartók also kind of brought this new things to the table. But even before Bartók, like even in Mozart time, like back then, like Turkish culture was kind of like the big thing, like Turkish, wardrobe, like Turkish music. Like, so for like what is it? Like Rondo a la Turk, you know, was it apparently that was model off of Turkish music at the time. You know, you got a lot of
I can definitely get that sensation from it.
You actually have Mozart playing a lot of different like folk music and like bringing that in because people wanted something novel, you know. And people don't realize, like, going back to all those times, like there was also a lot of things like that were based on folk music. Even if you go to, I think it was Liszt that did the famous, you know, that's Hungarian dance number 2. And another thing that people don't realize is Turkish, and back then it was heard as very Turkish, is 3 percussion instruments: the snare drum, the bass drum, and the triangle.
Really? Ding.
Yeah, people don't realize it. Like back in Beethoven's time, people would refer to those 3 instruments as Turkish instruments, which nowadays no one thinks that they've ever been.
It just is percussion.
Yeah,
it's homogenous at this point. It's just percussion.
So it's amazing nowadays, and this is something, and this has happened throughout music history, and this is also something that goes along with what is it, postmodernism. It's decontextualizing and recontextualizing things. So like, for instance, those used to be Turkish instruments, and they were used in like kind of ethnic Turkish music, you know? But then later on, they were adopted into the Western classical tradition, and now we don't see, we can't even fathom what it used to be used for, you know?
Yeah, I literally can't think of anything else percussion is used for.
I think it was probably used for like military or something, because originally the snare drum was known as the military drums.
Comes from that, of keeping time in like rowing or marching or even just probably doing work in general was just something that could keep you moving in a specific rhythm. A lot of those percussion things fall into that pattern.
Yeah. And like we're starting to do that now again. We're starting to, because we're in this time where like all music traditions are starting to come together in this world music tradition. It's like, and it's not just like one, like all the Western traditions, all of the, like the Indian tradition, the Japanese tradition, the Chinese tradition, it's all melding into this one world global music, you know? Like for instance, composers like me that grew up in like listening to jazz and rock, especially, we're going to start writing rock and jazz stuff in our classical music, you know? So you have these composers that write for like electric guitar in the orchestra, or like a clean guitar or something, you know, like, or like you start having like the Beijing opera gong, the boom kind of thing, like starting to get decontextualized and brought into a new context where like it's not heard, it doesn't conjure up images of like Beijing opera anymore. It starts just being another sound
in the repertoire. of the
Yeah,
composer.
and steel drums, I've started hearing this, like with David Lang in a piece he did for a short film, where the steel drums weren't like under the sea, under the
The
sea,
very tropical sound. Yep.
yeah, it's not that anymore. It's just like this really serene, like melancholy kind of sound.
Oh, that's an interesting way to
Like,
use those.
and I think the real MPV here is a guy you brought up earlier is John Cage, because he started the thing of listening to sound for sound itself.
Yep.
4
minutes 33.
So,
Just
yeah.
the ambience.
Mm. So
4 minutes 33 seconds. Some of the stuff he did in New York for his minimalism stuff is way out there. Some of the stories that were in The Rest Is Noise were like, man, the art scene must have been completely bonkers between him and Andy Warhol and all those people that were just the 60s running wild, basically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the 20th century in general, man.
Yeah, the story that I keep telling people that I read in there, I can't remember what piece of music it is right now, but it's at the top of the piece of music. It said if you were to play this many times, and it was an absurd number, it would take quite a bit of preparation. So, and the piece itself is like a minute long. You play it front to back, it's like a minute. John Cage took that instruction at the top that said if you would take preparation literally, and was like, I'm going to play it this many times. So he got a team of pianists, there were like 6 of them or something, to play this one piece for 19 hours in a concert hall. People could come in and track how long they'd been sitting there, and they would get paid per hour they sat in the concert hall.
Oh, wow.
One of the review critics they sent to like review the whole piece played the piano for a little bit of this piece. There was one guy who was literally there for all 19 hours, and he came out and he was like, I feel so refreshed.
Wow.
It's like, what a bonkers idea.
You know what's funny? Like, there's another story of John Cage that's like that. There's a piece that to this day is still being played in like some like on some organ in like the middle of Scotland or something. Like it's a song that literally takes like 34 years to play.
Oh, I've heard this story. They have to come in and move the note, basically.
Yeah, they just like take the sandbags and they move it to another chord, and then it just keeps playing, and it drones on, and it keeps going. Like, yeah, like
I think that's probably where we could wrap for today's music education episode.
Well, it really kind of became like music education,
music education history.
Yeah,
we kind of just like, talked music.
Yeah, it's music nowadays. Like I really like it's a good time for music.
It's a great time for music. You can listen to any piece that's ever been recorded at a touch of fingertips.
I literally think like we have like been birthed into like the second Renaissance, like an even greater Renaissance than the first Renaissance, because it's a global Renaissance.
Yeah, where we have access to the entirety of humankind in our pockets.
At the touch of a finger.
Yep.
At the touch of a finger. So like it's an amazing time that I can every day I can be speaking to my friends across the world, and would be sharing ideas with them in different languages, and man, and I can be listening to any country's music just on YouTube whenever I want,
Yeah, it's glorious.
And learning about it too. It's unprecedented, like, 交流, how do you say that? Like, exchange of ideas. So, yeah, I guess that we'll just end on that then.
Yeah. Next week, we're going to be talking about some philosophy topic. So tune in next Thursday.
Let's see. we can maybe talk about something like Nietzsche or existentialism or something like that.
I read a lot of that Eastern philosophy recently, so I feel like Zhuangzi or Tao
Oh
Te Ching
yeah,
or
let's do
Buddhism
Taoism.
Taoism would be cool.
But I feel like I'm also going to talk my ass off.
Hey, that's what this is all
Yeah.
about, just conversation.
Mm-hmm. All right, dude. Well, I guess we are jumping back into the pond.
We're gonna hop in. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Yep. Like, comment, subscribe. Punch that bell. Punch it. Punch your screen right now. Okay, bye, guys.
Bye, guys.